So, we've finally made it. In the previous video, I provided a description of the basic felt quality of the mystical experience, and with that foundation, we are now ready to tackle a topic of profound importance, if I do say so myself. You have been recommended this video. You have decided to start watching it, and you would do well to finish watching it. Even if you do not believe what I say, do me the courtesy of seeing how this ends. And if you do get just too bored to finish watching at any stage, I understand attention is fickle, and perhaps you're not ready to watch it anyway. Do us a favour, would you, and leave the video running in the background so that it may find its way more easily to those who are ready to watch it? That would be very nice of you. We began this series by talking about the basic duality of human attention and interest. It can go towards pleasure and our experience of the immediate world, or it can go towards righteousness and the idea of an ultimate reality. I have now also explained the mystical experience, which is the extreme of righteousness, in a similar way that perhaps some drug experience would be the extreme of pleasure. We shall begin this video by relativizing this extreme. Righteousness is ultimately just the subtle sense of the essence of the mystical experience. Even though full-blown mystical experiences are relatively uncommon, the sense of what they point to is not. Indeed, the notions of faith, piety, devotion, and holiness are all expressions of the sense of righteousness we have when we become aware of the existence of the power of creation, regardless of whether we interpret that in a secular or religious manner. We could analogize this sense to scent. If a mystical experience is to actually taste a certain flavor, then righteousness would be like smelling that flavor from a distance. Sometimes the scent is so faint that we're uncertain as to what exactly it is, and so righteousness is the act of trying to follow that scent to discover where it leads, to find the ultimate solution to life. So we should begin by thinking of something quite general, of a type of experience that many, if not all of us, have throughout our lives. Personal insights into where exactly we are, what we are doing, where we are going, what we need to change. Moments of grace, or inspiration, or intuition. Consciousness becomes inverted, perhaps on a long walk, while driving on the highway, while deep in meditation. These are the moments that change the course of our lives, when we make decisions and recognize mistakes. In these moments, creativity is bursting up from the depths and through the scaffolding of our minds. And this capacity to engage with creativity is always available to us, but most of the time we are simply looking the other way. We are detached from it. Creativity is behind us, and we are focusing on our memories and our instincts. We are focused on the maintenance and sustenance of daily life, managing routines, fulfilling responsibilities, adhering to societal norms. Development often does not come steadily in life. It comes in bursts of brilliance. And between those bursts, we simply try to maintain and explain the previous burst. Between our creative insights, we operate largely on autopilot, functioning more as automatons or NPCs than free conscious beings. Any intention to need to do something in your life acts as a barrier blocking awareness. We limit the possibilities of what we allow ourselves to direct our attention towards. We already have our minds made up, and nobody can do anything to convince us otherwise. We feel that we are exercising freedom by trying to control our experience, but we are really limiting it. There is a conflict between the power to create and the need to explain, for to be doing one is not to be doing the other. Indeed, some people spend their whole lives stuck in the loop of maintaining and explaining the only profound moment they've ever had, their birth, and these people are really barely alive. But for the rest of us, there are these moments of value that represent a break in the chain of automatic thought, fragments of freedom that cut through the routine noise of everyday life. The attachments and desires that limit the scope of our awareness are suspended, and we become real for a moment. I suspect that the only true free will is this state of alignment with creativity, so that we can only be said to be free whilst we are in contact with that part of ourselves that transcends the limitations of memory and instinct. The reason that the sense of righteousness is our means of locating creativity is the same reason why we see beauty in art. To act freely is to act virtuously, just as to create freely is to create beautifully. Only controlled action can ever be evil or ugly. And this does mean that free will is not, in fact, the conscious control of one's thoughts and actions. Control is never free. That would be controlled will, not free will. Freedom is an escape from the clutches of personal intention and memory and instinct. Perhaps I should not even use the term free will, as it is in this sense an oxymoron. To will implies control, while freedom is a lack of control. Freedom is the emergence within us of something that is not determined by our individual selves, which by definition are products of cause and effect. Freedom is an undirected burst of creativity. It may be influenced and sculpted in a certain way, but it is ultimately not determined by the material reality of our past, nor by our mental imaginations of the future. Freedom is wholly spontaneous. Creativity comes from outside our immediate identity, from our basic self-awareness, which is our ultimate identity. Creativity is what we fundamentally are, and we are merely dissociated from it. It is the very capacity to limit potentiality which leads to the emergence of individual identity. The development of the ego is not the gaining of freedom from nature, it is the separation from the freedom of nature. You have been asleep this entire time. And thus, we do not feel that creativity is our natural state most of the time. Creativity seems to be an extraordinary state that goes beyond the normal state of memory and instinct. Try to imagine, if you will, a time before the development of egoic consciousness, where life had less ability to perceive itself as distinct from the world around it. This would be a state of greater creativity and freedom without the constant cacophony of thoughts that influence our sense of what is right and true. And if we could go back far enough, there would be no individual self at all, as there would be no not self against which it could be identified. But when the ego begins to evolve, there's really no turning back. We become defined by the ego, and by causes, and by a desire for pleasure or comfort. These things reinforce the illusion of our separation from that fundamental creative unity. Ego consciousness becomes the new normal, and it is only through seemingly abnormal, meaningful experiences that we momentarily transcend ego consciousness and reconnect with that original creative self. Yet, these moments are fleeting, and we always revert back to the default of the perspective of the ego. You see, the person who is fully devoted to righteousness and creativity is not unified with it. In fact, they have drifted further away from it than anyone else, for they desire it more than anything. And this desire is a limitation on freedom. It separates the thing desired from that which desires it. This is the basic predicament that humans find themselves within. What is truly remarkable about human existence is not our ability to reconnect with creativity. Such spiritual or mystical experiences are totally natural. What is truly remarkable was our ability to disconnect from it in the first place, and live absorbed in our self-created narratives, which we wholeheartedly believe to be ultimately real. That is the miracle of life, for it is a consequence of the innate love and selflessness of the ultimate, which is the power and cause of creation. To cut oneself off from our sense of separation from our source is an impossibly difficult task, and this is the underlying problem with many of the world's religions. For religion is a manifestation of our desire to devote ourselves fully to that creative force, to righteousness, to the ultimate. It makes no difference whether we call that thing God, or Brahman, or even the quantum multiverse. Such traditions have stopped the search too soon by believing they have found the solution, and thus searching for it. They devote themselves to an ultimate truth, but they have not realized it. And this is because the ultimate truth is only ultimate from the perspective of that which is already limited. There is a deeper layer which they have not recognized, for the ultimate realization of the mystical experience signals that both creativity and memory, awareness and the ego are complementary, interdependent. Each relies on the other to exist. The state of creativity or righteousness is only remarkable. It is only an aspiration of man because it is juxtaposed to the relative. Without the relative, there would be no ultimate, and without the ultimate, there would be no relative. To focus on one is to suppress the other to the unconscious, but it is not to transcend it. By treating creativity as the ultimate reality as opposed to the immediate, rather than as just one half of a complementary relationship between the two, we can never truly grasp the real ultimate truth, which is complementarity itself, which is the non-duality between the divine and the mortal. Everything arises in complementarity with its opposite, including arising itself. The immediate dualistic reality that we experience must therefore have a non-dualistic partner, which cannot be called reality, for then it would not be complementary to reality. Our reality therefore depends on a non-reality, for lack of a better term. As if there was no non-reality, there would be nothing that reality was complementary to. The ultimate realization of the mystical experience is that the ultimate reality, which is this non-reality, is therefore the notion of complementarity itself. It is just the interdependence between this notion and our immediate world, What this means is that the structure of being is like a fractal. It is the infinite recursion of the interdependence between interdependence itself and the immediate world of experience. The entire thing is built of the finite and immediate, yet its very structure is infinite. Consequently, the ultimate reality is simply the void that exists at the end of the fractal tunnel, and we can neither say that it exists nor that it does not exist. It is entirely beyond human comprehension, not because we do not have the ability to understand, but because there actually is just not anything there to understand. The reason this sounds irrational is because reason and understanding are products of the finite, immediate ego, which is separated from the objects of its understanding. But the ultimate truth exists on the other side of the veil of reason and duality, where all truths are united with their non-truths, and all subjects are united with their objects. It is therefore the case that by devoting oneself to grasping the ultimate truth, one can never reach it. Firstly, this would require one to separate that which is devoted from that which it is devoted to, which fundamentally contradicts the non-duality of the ultimate. But more importantly, it would be to focus on only one side of polarity, whereas this one side actually contains the entire polarity within it ad infinitum. By endlessly chasing one side of this self-similar polarity, you go round and round in a circle. What this really means is that we already have the truth. All human experience is an expression of complementarity. We are within it, and it is within us. Literally everything is the ultimate truth. And all we need to do is to stop pretending that the truth is somehow beyond us in order to see it. It was only our very effort to seek out the ultimate solution that created the need to find it in the first place. Understand this. The problem that we need to solve is precisely that we are searching for a solution. For it is only this that makes us dissatisfied. Without this problem, no solution is needed. And without a solution, there is no problem. And so, I hope you are beginning to see that what we are doing in this video, and we still have more to get through, is that we are tearing down its very foundation, which was developed in the previous video. There I explained how the mystical experience is our only source of certain knowledge, and this might lead one to think that mystical experiences are a kind of enlightenment, or awakening, to use a slightly more prudent term. But such a gaining of wisdom is actually a false awakening, for the profundity of the mystical experience serves only to increase one's attention towards it, and focused attention is precisely what keeps us asleep, where being asleep is a metaphor for the limitations we place on our own awareness. The mystical experience does provide a glimpse of awakening, but the sense of importance we place on it after the experience passes sends us swiftly back to dreamland. Indeed, the mystical experience is the most pernicious delusion of all, precisely because it's also the ultimate truth. The true awakening is the recognition that the certainty of the mystical knowledge of the solution to the problem of life is not, in fact, the solution. That the solution is not intellectual at all. This is why awakening is such a slippery ghost. One has to transcend or reject the certainty of knowledge to abide in the acceptance of ignorance. And how can one stop believing what one already knows to be true? It is only in this selfless act that we may surrender our devotion to awakening itself, that we may surrender the most valuable jewel in the world. Only then may we understand that the real solution is the state experience was in before we began trying to understand the solution, that there was never anything to solve. It was all imagined. We were dreaming up the idea that there was something that needed to be solved. We were dreaming about the possibility of awakening, not realizing that we were already awake. And it was this that sent us to sleep, and thus created the need to awaken. Now, you should know by now that my work is situated entirely in the Western tradition of philosophy, because it is my goal to develop in our own language our first true science of wisdom. But I certainly am not entirely ignorant of its alignment with a particular idea from the East. This realization is surely what the Buddha realized under the Bodhi tree, and this does make Buddhism somewhat unique amongst similar traditions which express devotion, attention, focus towards an ultimate reality and truth. Other traditions rightly recognize that we should not devote ourselves to the ego and to memory and to pleasure and materialism, and that the answer lies in that creative spark of awareness within us. We should not think lightly of this recognition, for it is profound and true. It is an important stage through which we must pass. It is just not the final word on the matter. A deeper investigation reveals that save for the rare spontaneous glimpse, we can never reach that creative spark through deliberate effort, for this would be like reaching the endpoint of a fractal. We may, through devotion, come to see a world in which the duality between right and wrong has collapsed, but so long as we are devoted, the duality between non-duality and duality themselves shall remain, and we shall mistake our world for an illusion. To overemphasize the ultimate at the expense of the immediate leads to a spiritual myopia. Perhaps you will become a great sage, or a shaman, or even a prophet. Perhaps you will imagine fantastical worlds beyond our own, but you will simply have made the ego unconscious and still shall be chained by it. Only by letting go of all notions of an ultimate reality or truth can we actually align ourselves with the ultimate truth. And thus, in a miraculous turn, we achieve what those who are devoted are trying to achieve without even trying ourselves. Because you only get where you already are when you stop trying to get anywhere. Again, the story of the Buddha seems to aptly convey this realization. It was only when he abandoned the extremes of asceticism and hedonism that he found the middle way, which led to his enlightenment. It would be quite natural then to interpret the middle way of Buddhism as the complementarity between the immediate and the ultimate, awareness and the ego, creativity and memory, righteousness and pleasure. We cannot transcend duality by distinguishing it from non-duality, for that is a duality in itself. That which has been designated with the term awakening is not a destination to be discovered in life or in thought. The mystical understanding is merely a lucid dream. You are aware, but still you are asleep. You have converted the notion of awakening into an intellectual formula, and with this you have lost its essence. Only when we let go of our understanding can we truly understand, for only in this state are we not juxtaposing our understanding from what there is to understand. Only when we stop chasing the infinite fractal inside our minds are we able to see clearly that we are that fractal, and we were only chasing our own tail. Only in that state are we truly conscious and creative, for trying to do anything is a restriction on what we are already doing naturally. For trying to know anything is a restriction on what we already know. When we stop limiting ourselves, we arrive at a meta level of consciousness, where we recognize the interdependence and complementarity of all things, as well as the paradoxicality at the basis of our being. The ultimate truth is that there is no ultimate truth. The nature of the ultimate self is the absence of itself. This is the meaning of the freedom of creativity. There is literally nothing we can say or think that can define or capture it in any way, for its own emptiness is precisely that which makes it full, which gives it its power. Listen to me. There is nothing you can do to realize the solution to the problems you think you have, whether emotional or intellectual. Nothing. And the only reason you do not realize the solution is that you still think that you can realize the solution. And if you think you have stopped trying to realize the solution, you have not realized that you are still trying to realize it. It is impossible to realize the solution because there is nothing to realize. And it is impossible to decide to not try to realize the solution because that decision is still trying. What you are trying to realize is precisely the state of having stopped trying to realize. You are creating an unsolvable paradox in your mind that feeds itself by making you suffer and thus leading you to try harder and harder and harder. You must stop torturing yourself. The solution doesn't exist. And to realize it doesn't exist, you have to stop trying to realize that something that doesn't exist. You have to know that you cannot realize it, deep within your bones. You have to know that your very desire to realize only exists in relation to the idea that you might realize something. When you truly stop trying, you will realize that there is nothing to realize, and you will realize that this nothing is precisely what you wanted to realize all along, for it is that which brings you peace. Yes, it is a paradox, and it's all rather amusing. I hope you can see the importance and beauty of this, and you may have to listen several times to do so. Creativity really is our true self and the ultimate reality, yet it is entirely empty, for it is infinite and it is unlimited, so there is simply nothing finite there to grasp. The essential nature of our true self is precisely that it does not cling to itself, and it is only because it does not cling to itself that ego and separation inevitably arise. This is the ultimate cause of complementarity, selflessness, sacrifice, love, peace. Reality has surrendered itself to your own ego, and it is only insofar as the ego has arisen that we are able to cling to it or not, the latter of which is that very same selflessness, sacrifice, love, and peace. To truly be who you are, you must stop trying to be anything. The fact that the ultimate is creativity is precisely why and how our immediate universe exists. It is only because creativity does not limit itself by defining itself that there is nothing to prevent the immediate world from arising. And it is only because the immediate world has arisen that we are able to reflect back on ourselves and recognize that we are the silence that allows for the sound, the non-being that allows for the being. And the only way we can realize who and what we truly are is by not seeking what we are, for we are literally that which does not seek itself. The ego is the seeker, the child that we have birthed, which is literally that which does seek itself. And this is why the ego is always making such noise. So long as the ego continues identifying itself, the noise it makes will cover up the silence. So, what should we do? Of course, we do nothing. We're already there. It's only the doing that creates the illusion that we're not. But, of course, those who listen to this will seldom accept this truth, for to accept it, you cannot try to accept it. You will continue your doing and your seeking, and you will have to realize the truth for yourself. But I hope you will remember, whenever you're in distress, whenever you have a problem, that you cannot blame anyone or anything else for the situation you are in. You are responsible for everything. Good luck in your dream. I sincerely hope you have fun. And if you ever want to pursue this teaching further, I am ready and waiting to help you. Thank you for finishing this video. This is by no means an end. Everything before this was a mere prelude to this video, and this video is merely the beginning of what I truly want to say. If you want to hear what I have to say, please consider supporting me. I ask this only because right now I'm out of time. I have to go back to work. I've been devoted to this for far too long, and I am falling into the trap of trying that I just warned you against. But I would love to be able to continue sharing my understanding with you without the feeling that I need to try, because I'm really only getting started.